Okay, as people are coming in, we are going to start with a bit of an actual build activity, because I am one of those that if you're going to come to a session, you're going to put in the work. I want you to be able to leave with at least a tangible idea or something that you could take, even if nothing that I say even makes sense. And it's okay if you're in a group of like 2 or 3, but if you could, make sure you're just not by yourself, because otherwise then we're judging just you as opposed to a team. Yes, before you get all comfortable, please go ahead. I'm Skyler, this is Stacy. Clint might voice an opinion. We're from Utah. We're on the Utah Coalition for Education Technology, so it's the InnEdCO of Utah. We're board members there, and we got to meet the team, and we were excited to come out and share just some of the practices and research that we've gotten to be a part of. So we might all voice, but we're going to be coming around and handing out some materials. So just keep that in mind. Jess, is there anyone you don't mind joining?
Yeah, sorry.
Or if anyone wants to adopt Jess, she's a fantastic orphan. We were just in the same session, and she has great insights.
I love being a good orphan.
Yes. Who wants to adopt our orphan Jess? Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. Fantastic. We'll keep enough in case there's a random 6th that wanders in.
So it's the little light bulb in the corner when you log in.
Okay, and then we get our paper clips. And I'm giving you a very carefully numbered out number of paper clips. You're welcome. Okay. All right, everyone looking at your table. You have straws, index cards, and paper clips, right? Okay. Fantastic. And thank you, Stacy. All right, if for any reason you need more, please let me know. This is an activity I have lifted without permission from a class that I was observing, and I thought it was the perfect premise for us to be able to kick things off today. But just to give you a little bit of background, my name is Skyler Carr. I was an elementary STEM teacher, and this was my world. And so please take everything I say with the grain of salt and the filter that I'm going to be talking at you and working with you and being critical of a lot of the process from my very narrow scope of experience, which is working with kinder through 8th grade in elementary STEM as a specialist, and then eventually leading to some very focused and weird research with Mission.io. We started in the ball closet of a gym, where for our kids, I was involved in the song of dance of trying to get Title I kids to care. And for us, that resulted in us taking the ball closet of our gym and turning it into a spaceship simulator. And this was all because I was so tired of running out of materials, and I was just like, I just want a space. I want something where I can just throw the kids and get them to solve problems, because during these couple of years when I was at the school leading up to this, we were really trying to use the specialty time not as a separate standalone thing, but as an extension of what was going on in class, which made my life really hard because I had to constantly be learning what's the math standard, what's the social studies standard, what's the science standard, how do I tie into that? And so it was a lot of inventing. So this was mostly a survival mechanism for me, was, okay, I'm gonna make a spaceship simulator. That way I get to use science fiction as a way to get the kids to be put into the context of problems where they have to work together and they have to actually use the knowledge from class to solve a real problem, which in our process, we discovered and found that my role was most effective as the #1 check for mastery. If you ever have questions about mastery, reach out to TR. She is with Modern Classroom Project. They are the best PCVL program I think that exists. But when it comes to mastery, there's no better check on if a student understands than if they can take knowledge and use it in context to solve a real problem. Not multiple choice, not quick image recall, not rote memorization. It's can they use it? Can they communicate it? Can they work with others? So that's a lot of the background of what we're working on. What we did in the ball closet has expanded over the last decade. It is now research that we're doing with the National Science Foundation, Department of Education, Institute of Education Science. It's been used by over 1 million kids in over 1,000 schools. And I'm gonna give it to you for free to use if you want to this next year, if it is something that will help you survive, kind of like it did for me. But this is not a sales pitch for that. This is me taking the research that we've done and the practices I've discovered to try to help you hopefully level up anything that you do. So in here, who is a specialty type STEM or STEAM person? The majority of the room. Oh my gosh, that's great. And then who is classroom specific? Okay, cool. So for either case, if you're on the specialty side, I'm gonna yell. I do a lot of yelling. I'm gonna be sharing a lot of just the things that worked from that aspect, but also on the classroom side, even if it's not a STEM activity, hopefully the lenses and the practices that I share will give you just a check, where if you just take one of them, and you take this one activity that you love doing and you say, oh, I think I could make it better if I just did this. That's what I hope. That's a great takeaway, okay? So it's something that's actionable and you can jump in. So what we're gonna do is we are going to have you build a bridge. That's it. I just want you to use only the materials that you have on your table, work with your team, and build a functioning bridge. You have 4 minutes starting right now. And I will be moving around the room to kind of ask questions. Stacy, feel free if you want, you can build since that's such a small group. Build a bridge, 4 minutes. Just 4 minutes and the materials you have. Those are the only constraints right now. Uh-oh, TR just got out of a math session. She's thinking geometry. They're thinking geometry. I'm never going to get that right, TR. Thank you for being patient with me. They're getting geometry.
It's good. Self-correction is key, right?
Like I said, dude, French and Spanish, I mess it up way more.
Yeah, no, totally understand.
Ooh, puncturing with the paper clips, cool. A suspended drawbridge. Not to panic you are halfway through your time already. 2 more minutes.
I expected it to count down.
I did too, but my Claude code didn't fully get to that one. When I pushed the button, it didn't happen, so.
Like internet issues while
No, it's mostly been my own tech. I'm using new tools to build my slides.
Okay.
And so this is one of those new tools. And it didn't do the timer built in like I was hoping, which is fine.
Tech is always fun. Is there a way we can group that?
I wonder. So, if
Ooh, stealing ideas. I love it. Hey, I didn't say you can't spy. That's great.
I'm gonna do what kids do. Look and see.
Very cool. All right, we have 90 seconds, and I'm only hoping at the end of 90 seconds that you have enough to show and tell, because I'd love every group to tell us about your bridge and what your process was like.
no.
But you are cruising. That looks great.
He started with one goal. And I thought, oh, that's interesting.
It's going, yeah.
And I said, what is that? Is that the pier of the bridge?
So you kind of accidentally stumbled your way into a column approach. And I like that you're actually experimenting with some new strategies over here. That's cool. Okay, 1 minute.
Okay, wait. Is that a slide?
Tony Rose, you're so consistent. Can't turn it off. Don't turn it off, please. All right, 30 seconds.
The best.
The best bridge ever. Okay. Fantastic. 10 seconds. A bridge that doubles as a gym. Very health conscious. All right, everyone, go ahead and hands down, materials down. Fantastic. Let's do a quick show and tell. Please tell us kind of what your approach is, what you're thinking, if there was anything that stood out in your experience. Do you mind if we start over here? Could you, everyone, I don't know if that is liftable. It kind of is, okay. Elegant, simple.
We use the bendy straws to make the piers, and then we are having issues with the paper clips.
So in this case, one of the materials was almost a detractor.
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Okay, very cool. Let's go up here. Do you guys show us yours and tell us anything about your experience?
So we connected the straws and used the bendy pieces similar to what they did, but we were thinking of a platform on the top and then how it might connect to the straws with the paper clip.
Okay.
The paper clip didn't always fit well around the straw.
Now, were you cheating off of each other's work, or was it just coincidence?
We didn't.
Coincidence. I love that. I love it. Very, very cool. Okay. What about yours? Tell us about your bridge and your experience.
Greg folded an index card in half and made an upside down V, and I said, "Oh, is that a pier?" And he kind of said, "Well, maybe." And I said, "Okay, I'll do piers," and that's what we get.
Okay, it's definitely the longest bridge of the group. Very cool. I like the stages. All right, over here. We've got a lot of creativity happening.
It is possibly earthquake proof. It perhaps goes both ways, and it's got a pull-up bar.
So, oh, now you did something interesting.
Oh, we totally stole your idea, but we folded it the other way.
Folded the other way.
Okay.
Our resources. of
Starting to
spying
reference
on
each other's work.
Okay.
I love it. Okay. Cool. And is it a three-way bridge? I'm trying to figure that out.
Well, it was supposed to be earthquake proof, but we didn't.
Okay.
You know.
Cool. Cool. All right. And what about over here? I love the elegance.
Well, it started with, it's the end of the second day, and our brains are pretty tapped.
Yep. Yep.
Cassie was like, we don't have to make this hard. It can be simple, which was great, because we were, of course, all trying to go all engineering. And that was just too much at the end of the second day. So she literally just folded one piece of paper, which was genius. And then we were like, well, when it fails, we'll put a raft underneath of it.
Yes.
You'll follow through on the raft.
I love your careful use of language of when it fails. Okay.
We're in America, we know what the bridges are.
We do. Yes. We're fully aware of how poorly we fund infrastructure in this country. Okay.
That's it. And well, this is like to fake people out. Like it's not gonna fail, but we also don't know what it's for, so it's kind of hard to decide. Yeah, like were we going for like the longest, or
Yeah.
could hold the most weight? Like we didn't have to be objective. So
Yes. I'm sure.
let's keep it simple.
I'm sure there's a lot of you that are already eyeing like the lack of structure, the lack of goals. There's a lot of that's tied into this, but I do want to invite you to think about some of the last projects you've done. And if you're not in a specialty that is STEM or STEAM, or just any time you've tried to bring this into your classrooms. The reason I lifted this activity is because this was one when I got brought in to consult with a district and work with doing training with their STEM teams. This is one that they were really proud of because it was something that they could display around the school. They actually built these little display cases showing the kids' work. And I gave you exactly the instructions the kids had, except they had more time. They had a whole period to work on it. And so it was something that the school used with pride about these amazing things that they had done. And I thought, what an amazing art project that completely lacks in the engineering and the opportunity to solve a real problem. And this is kind of the core of what I wanted to talk about. And we'll come back to this a lot. And we're going to redo this activity at the end. And I'm going to have you help me rebuild it. But this is really the thesis around, are we simply following directions, or even the lack of directions, or are we actually solving a real problem? And this is actually, whenever I do work with districts, one of my big criticisms of robotics, even, for example, is most of the time when I see even robotics, what I think is the easiest thing to stamp as a really solid STEM tool. Most often, I see robotics not being used as a STEM tool. It is students following step-by-step instructions. It becomes a great activity in instruction following. And I watch my kids do robotics, and I've sat down with them before, and I've gone and assisted at the school, and I will see, you're going to, even when they're coding, you're going to create this logic, and then you're going to do this, and then you're going to do this. Whenever we end then the students, we're completely removing the autonomy that is going to give them the opportunity to learn. And that is what I was trying to make very obvious in this experience, and we'll have that go through, but I really want to help us understand why this is so important, because it's not just the learning outcomes. I do have some research I'm going to actually cite around some of the projects that we've done, where by focusing on these things, you can have a massive impact on the learning outcomes and the knowledge retention that's going to happen. The bigger one actually ties into, I was invited out to CES, which is the big consumer electronics show, and it was in Vegas, and I was going to go down the strip. I was going to actually call an Uber, but then I saw that there were these Zoox self-driving taxis. Has anyone seen those? The automated taxis? And of course, I'm like, yeah, Clint, I had the same response. I was like, I don't know if I trust, because I know when we were beta testing our tech, it was not good. And I'm like, these guys are beta testing here, but I was like, I got to try it, at least for the TikTok reels. So I'm like, I get in, well, I pull out the app, we push a button, and a taxi just pulls up with your name on it. And you push a button and the doors open. And you sit down and it won't move until you buckle up. So I buckle up, and then you get to choose your music, you get to choose the temperature. There's even a spot to charge your phone. The first 30 seconds were wild. Man, my wife, we're like looking around, we're taking pictures. And then it's rush hour in Vegas on the strip, and then we are not worried at all. We just start chatting. And it wasn't even until like 10 minutes into the ride that we're like, this is the best. Like, if I could buy this right now to go pick up my kids from soccer, oh my gosh, it forces them to wear their seatbelt. Like, everything about it was so perfect. But I was listening to this podcast with Tony Robbins, who's really dedicated his life to trying to help people and better, like a lot of self-fulfillment. And what I love about this is he actually cited some stuff that stuck with me, where he talks about driving. He talks about the automated automobile industry. And he says there are 8 million jobs in just the US that are doing delivery, taxi, Uber, whatever it might be within that sector, that industry, 8 million jobs. And if we think back to 2008, the Great Recession, the greatest economic downfall of our lifetime, we lost 8 million jobs. So in just one sector, we're about to see a greater overhaul because of how it will permeate through all of society. Because it's not just the drivers, it's the receiving, it's the ship, it's everyone connected to all of this that's all going to get automated. And this is where I'm a big believer that as the world is racing to make technology smarter, our only hope to prep the kids is to make them more capable humans. Their greatest asset in this AI era is going to be their human side, what they're capable of. And that is why in this experience, whenever you are a STEM specialist or whenever you're bringing these activities into your domain, into your classroom, these are the moment where you are going to get to build the human. And it doesn't have to be a separate thing. I actually believe it's more effective when it is tied to the subject matter and when it is an extension of what's going on, because it is going to impact that. But it is so important to understand that we are not just hitting, oh, it's not showing up. There's things that are supposed to be here at the bottom. There's 3 areas that I want you to keep in mind. If you want to talk about human capability, the way that we in our research have defined this is knowledge, skills, and dispositions. Okay, knowledge, skills, and dispositions. It is what a student knows, what they can do, and who they're becoming. If you can keep all three of those in mind, that allows us to rise above just the concept of only SEL or soft skills or 21st century skills or durable skills. It is the concept of a capable human being the knowledge, skills, and dispositions, all of these in tandem because they all benefit one another. You can't demonstrate good skills unless you have baseline knowledge. And baseline knowledge means nothing unless you know how to use it. And you're not going to know how to use it because when things get hard and you decide you're going to quit, none of that matters. So this aspect of who we're becoming is so important. So this is why in all of this, we're going to come back. I don't love the doom and gloom approach. I want to talk a lot more about hope, but I do want to be realist and let you know that if we just do knowledge by itself, that's what most of our resources, most of our training, most of, unfortunately, our assessment as teachers is focused on. You will benefit the knowledge. We have research that proves it. You will benefit the knowledge if you address the skills and dispositions. And we're not the only literature that supports that, because the way that they're trying to change the tests and a way a lot of our year-end assessments work now is it's not a bunch of multiple choice answers. It's now story problems that have 8 questions relating to the text. And that is a situation where the students have to approach something that is more abstract and they have to interpret, they have to take information, they have to extrapolate. And that process requires knowledge and skills and dispositions in order to effectively score. So one thing I also want to just put in our minds, because I'm going to call back to this as well, because I think the concept of skills can be really big. There's so many lists and so many things. I really like just narrowing it down to these 5. These are the 5 that I find to be the most common in all of the research from the World Economic Forum. They always do a future of jobs report every year. This is what they list as the top 5 jobs that are going to be the most in demand, even with the change of AI and the 80 million jobs that they predict are going to be displaced. In addition, this is what most companies in the Fortune 500 are listing as the most in demand and most commonly overlapping year over year. These are the 5. And I'm going to call back to these because I think this is a really good first check before I get into the actual strategies, to say if I'm doing an activity or I'm using technology, if it is not directly building one of these skills, then I need to really reassess whether I'm using it effectively. This is a really good check, for example, with robotics. If my robotics has the kids sitting down and following instructions step by step on plug this in, do this, write this code, and have it complete this process, and they're not getting to be creative, they're not needing to talk to each other, they're not needing to solve a problem. If I'm going through this checklist, I am able to quickly see that my use of robotics is not a STEM activity. So I'm going to put this up here, just keep this in our minds because we will call back to it. But I want to talk about those activities that we do. And I'm sorry, this is usually a 2-hour training that I do at districts with all of their STEM teams, so I'm going to cruise and pack this in. But I don't want you to feel bad if you're feeling like, oh, I've not been doing this right, okay? You're doing heroic efforts. I adore and love all of you. The number one thing that I always preach in all of our research and all of our banners is that the best technology in the room is the teacher. Every assessment, every piece of research that's ever been done has never been able to beat a great teacher. And so the great teacher is going to be the core. So it is not you that is failing. It is going to be the design and the process, which is why I want to go through 3 different lenses that we have found to be the most effective. Now you can use one of these, you can use a combination of these, or you can ignore it altogether. I don't mind, whatever works best for you. But these are the 3 things that I found to be really effective. This morning I did a whole session about this. This is challenge-based learning. This is the concept that for those that are familiar with project-based learning or problem-based learning, challenge-based learning is within that umbrella. The difference with project-based learning is project-based learning, you have a tangible product, something that the kids are creating to solve a problem. This could have a product, but it's more about just these 3 steps, which are engage, investigate, act. And what this means is we need to have a problem that gets the kids to care about it enough that they will naturally investigate. Not because I told them to, but because they understand the problem so clearly and what it's going to take to at least start to investigate it, that they naturally are led to that step. And then through that investigation, they're going to get information that leads to them wanting to act. So for example, in our missions that we create, all of these missions are tied to academic standards where we're saying, teacher, if you're going to be teaching in 1st grade parents and offspring, we build a mission where we tell the students there are a bunch of baby creatures, little alien creatures, that have gotten separated from their parents. And we need to try to identify which ones belong to which parents so that we can help them find their parents, because that's really sad if you're not with your parent. That sounds scary, right? So let's work really hard and let's make sure we understand how to identify traits. Or if you're learning about 6th grade atoms and molecules, we tell the students there has been an explosion in a lab and there's a bunch of unknown chemicals in the air and we need to save the scientists that are stuck inside. So we're going to send you to investigate which paths out of the building are the safest based off of your knowledge of molecules and atoms to identify which are toxic and which aren't. And then you're going to get to act by, through the last step in that process, you're going to have to change one molecule in all of these compounds to figure out how to make it not toxic. And so this process is something where we give them a compelling reason, a contextual understanding that drives them to naturally already start asking questions and get them to act. So this is what challenge-based learning is. Now, when we come back to this, I'm going to reference this. We're going to try to see how could we apply challenge-based learning to this and change this to make it a little bit more meaningful. So start thinking about that. The other one is something I think we're all going to be much more familiar with. This is the engineering design process. The engineering design process, I think, is so important because it is iterative. So one big failure in what we just did was we had a start and we had an end. And what I saw with the school that was proudly displaying these bridges was that there was no ability to fail. And so there was no reason to go back. All they cared about was the final product. And if all you care about is the answer, then the learning is optional. Because if they can just produce what you want and there's no need to test it and then refine and go back and test and refine and test and refine and go back and redesign because it totally failed, if you're not creating this process where failure is a mechanic, then you are just trying to create an outcome or an answer and you're making the learning optional. So when we think about the engineering design process, where I was presenting you with in this art project was create a bridge. There was nothing that needed to test. There was no design that was needed. There was nothing that we needed to then reiterate and go back and try again because it failed. So when we come back and redesign this activity, think about what we could do that would build failure into this process so that with our kids, we can show them that it's okay to fail. It doesn't make you a failure. Failure is a part of the learning process. That is how we're going to get there. The third lens that I want us to look at is gamification. I know we hear this a lot, and as Tony Rose knows, I have strong feelings about the concept of gamification. I think that 95% of what is labeled as gamification is not actually gamification. It is pointification or competification. For example, Kahoot or Bookit. I think they are great tools in a very focused usage scenario that have been completely overutilized, that are really good at teaching kids how to answer quickly and compare themselves with others only with that framework in mind because of the pointification. True gamification is very, very different. If you ever want a fantastic book, I strongly recommend this book by Dr. McGonigal. She goes through all of the research of game-based learning. It's called Reality is Broken. Such a great read. And this goes through what real gamification looks like. Yes, points can be a part of it. This is my own summary from her work. This is what we have found to be really powerful. If you're going to think about what gamification actually is, first off, it's a role or an identity. What's so cool about games is you get to put yourself into the context of a problem and actually be a part of a story. And that story builds in the chance to actually explore and ask questions and make the investigation more natural. There's a clear goal. You know, right now the goal that I gave you was build a bridge. And I think we could have a much clearer, much better goal than that one. Clear boundaries. I love boundaries. Boundaries are so important. Constraints are what make things so much fun. If you think about sports, the majority of sports are all a random group of people meeting on a square field and agreeing to arbitrary constraints about what's the shape of the ball, what can we do with the ball, what side am I going to be on, what's the goal with the ball. The constraints are what make sports interesting. And so the constraints are what can really make true gamification beautiful in this aspect. You know, one of our constraints is the materials we have. I had the group in the back asking, like, what, is it just the time? Like, yes, I think we could add more constraints and make this more interesting. And sometimes constraints can be built into the goal. It can be that it has to span a certain distance, or it has to hold a certain amount of weight, or whatever we want to do. The failure, we've already talked about that. Rewards, yes, I think points are great, but anyone that just adds points to something and says, I gamified it, that's not gamification. We're missing the mark. And then epic scale, I'll give some examples of this at the end. I think we do too much work watering ourselves down. You gotta be able to just be ludicrous if you want to have ludicrous results and ludicrous fun. Otherwise, you can't expect the outcome to not meet the input. You gotta be willing to go crazy. So the last check I wanna do before we jump in, because, oh my gosh, this time is going by so fast. This is also my last check. This is something that we work a lot, and I think there's a lot of techlash happening, not as much in Colorado yet. I think it will hit very soon. But there are 17 different states that all have legislation around screen time and limiting who can use it. There's 28 states that have technology limitations already in place, and it's only growing. And a really good check for any technology that we're using in class, because a lot of, I think the limitations have merit. I think we have overutilized a lot of screen time. I think we have put too much benefit on that. And one thing that I really like to let people know is we're kind of developing our framework internally for ourselves. Is we call it the lookup test. Is how quickly can we get the technology that we're using to get the kids to need to look up at some point. And that can be look to their neighbor and ask a question, look to the teacher and inquire or get pushed a little bit further. That lookup needs to be an action that takes them away from the 8-inch screen. And a part of that is also when we're isolating kids or behind a screen or isolating them behind a piece of technology, we need to be mindful of that some of the best ideas that I saw here were because you were peeking and cheating off of each other. The chance to actually get to work together and work through this is so powerful. And that is also a part of where the collaboration is critical. We have a lot of research around that. If I had more time, I would go through it. Teacher-led, I want to be clear about this. There's a lot of effort to make things student-led. Teacher-led is something that I want to make sure I qualify as every time that we've done, I know I already mentioned this, but every time that there's been research done, we've never beat a great teacher without tech. The teacher is the best technology in the room. And this is where when we run our missions, the missions are this like big immersive experience where each kid has a device that gives them a role and the teacher's guiding them through this experience. One of the first things I train the teacher on is as soon as the mission starts and gives the kids the objective, there's been an explosion in the lab and we need to save these researchers. This is your first task, this is your second task. As soon as that happens, I train every teacher to push pause, hijack the mission and say, what are our objectives? And get the kids to articulate it back after it's left the screen. Get them to think about what that might mean. What do you think we might have to do? What have we talked about that you think is actually going to help us? This does two things. One is it gets them to focus and gets them to really lock into the mission. But second is it shows them the power dynamic that should always exist. That this is your experience. That you are captaining the learning. Even if they're making the choices, even if they're building, even if they're working on teams, you are still the one that is going to show up and ask a question about why are you designing it that way? What's going on? You're going to be prompting that wondering. They need to know the dynamic of you are the captain of the learning. And that is so helpful for what true teacher-led experiences mean. It doesn't always mean standing in front of the class lecturing for an hour. If you want some great resources, look at Modern Classroom Project around setting the stage with content so that you can just let the students, you can mentor and guide them through that experience. Eventizing, we'll talk about this as we go into this. But let's talk about our builds, just so we have time. So with everything that we've talked about, we have the challenge-based learning, engage, investigate, act. We have the engineering design process, something that really forces reiteration, designing, actually going through this. Gamification, true gamifications. I don't want anyone to say, it's 100 points if you do this. No, we're not even gonna allow us to do points today. I'm gonna show you gamification is possible without points. Thinking of what could be our role, what's the setting, what's the context? How do we immerse ourselves into this situation that then benefits even the challenge-based learning where the engage is more meaningful? How do we do this? So right now, if anyone has ideas, just call out if anything's come to mind. What could we do to change this one with the same materials that we have to make our bridge building better?
Talk about how long it has to be.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So how long? Do you want to go overall length or do we want it to actually have a spanning Like, do we want it to actually be able to bridge a gap? What do we think?
How about both?
Okay. What do we think? I like that idea. Could we have it, we all have cell phones. Could we make it have to span at least a cell phone? Is that fair? So it has to at least span a cell phone. Do we want to go horizontal or do we want to go lengthwise? Length. I love it. We're not scared. You guys, learning is fun. It's fun to be challenged. It's really cool. I love that we're opting in. Thank you. So let's go lengthwise. I love that. And then we'll keep it a little bit flexible. Length, we can see how far you make it or whatever you need for the structure to work lengthwise, because length is actually, that's more than one index card. That's going to be tough. What else? What other ideas do we have?
Who is it for? Is it a bridge for cars, or is it a bridge for bikes, or is it a bridge for is it a walking bridge?
Great question. What's our context?
Or is it over water or land? Yeah.
So if we had the 2 hours that this normally takes, we would go through this. Can I show you what I actually did during lunch? Just to put this in perspective. I'm gonna mirror. Start mirroring. Okay. Can you see that? Okay. So I did this just for fun, because I think this gives context. So I went into ChatGPT and I just listed out, I'm doing a STEM activity for some 6th graders, and here's my goals, and here's what I want to accomplish, and here's what I want them to feel in the situation of knowing what's the context. Because I want them to feel engagement. I want them to be pulled in so that they are led to investigate without me needing to tell them anything. I want them to be like, shut up, stop talking, let us get to work. That's what I want to build. And it generated me this picture, because I said, let's have a volcano erupting and we have to escape it. Okay, when I said epic scale, right? So there's a volcano erupting, and it gave me this image that I think is so cool. So there's a volcano and there's a bunch of cars all stuck across this chasm, okay? Then I took it over to Gemini, and I said, hey, Gemini, here's this picture I have. Can you turn this into a video with audio so I can have it loop on a slide to make them just feel the power of this experience? Let me see. Can everyone see that? Okay. It's not perfect. I wanted to show you first iteration, first prompt. I didn't do any back and forth. Let me show you how cool this is. Oh, you can barely hear it. So there's sirens, there's explosions, and then it will restart. And so there's the sirens playing, there's the explosions, there's all this stuff. This was just Gemini, took the picture, threw it in. This is still just one prompt. I literally just copy and pasted the other prompt and then said, now take this image and turn it into a video that I can loop. So does that give us an answer, Tiara? I'm sorry, I'm like leading us in. But this gives us the premise of like, okay, if there's cars that need to go across, they're heavy, right? So not only does it need to span a phone, it should probably also be able to hold something. So at this point, should we make it also hold a cell phone?
Yeah.
Okay, we all got cell phones. And this way we gotta build the bridge well. We don't want our cell phones to fall and break, all right? Does this give you at least some ideas on like, this is where the gamification to me is not the points. It's putting them into a scenario where they feel that compelling drive to then investigate and to work and to be a part of this, because I do not believe in assessment by smiles. Fun is not the goal. Fun is a tool. Engagement is a tool that we're going to use to get the kids to let us push them further than they usually let themselves be pushed. If I ask them to sit down and draw a bridge, or if I ask them to answer multiple choice questions about bridges or about what geometric shapes are the most effective or the strongest, it's much harder to do what we're going to do than to answer those questions. But I can get them to be more willing to do this than anything else. Okay? So what other ideas do we have? Because we got to jump in and try it. So we have, it has to hold a phone, it has to span a phone, because we're in a situation where there's explosions and a volcano is about to erupt that gives us a time frame. And now we have to hold buses and people, and we're having to escape, and we're going to be heroes at the end of this. One of my favorite tests for a really good activity is, can I be the first thing that they tell their parents when they get picked up from school? Do you think them saving an entire town from a volcanic eruption is going to be the first thing they'll tell their parents about? Absolutely, yes. Okay, what else? So thinking back through this. So engineering design process, I think that's already built in now. We're going to have to iterate. We're going to be testing with the phones. That's in there. I love the way we've given ourselves roles. Anyone else have any other thoughts? there's also a really cool thing about this, which is the final point that I can bring up, which is you're allowed to give yourselves grace. You don't have to make everything perfect. It doesn't need to be there. Guess what? We already did a lot, which is these two little changes that are going to make a huge difference. Let's just be okay with that. And let's just try it. Are we ready to jump back in and try it? Okay, you that just came in, if you don't mind joining one of these groups of two, we're going to jump in and rebuild. I'm going to give you 4 minutes again. Let's see how this changes the output that we produce. But I'm going to give you 30 seconds to plan. So talk as a team about what you want to do, and then I'll start the timer. All right, and timer starts now. 4 minutes, and I actually have it on the board this time.
The problem is with span. You like the idea of kind of put two together connected? I think that needed more stuff.
We don't need this iteration.
I love it. We're going back to the basics.
Our problem is that one of the constraints is has to be so the span that we build has to be long enough. You guys come to the drum set?
Birthday party.
So that's why I was going through moments, but this might work. This is a great. What if we Yeah, we need
3 minutes remaining. Ooh, that's cool. Can you fit a cell phone under it? That was one thing that we talked about.
Really? I didn't hear that.
We're going to span a cell phone underneath because that's the size of our chasm.
Oh, I see. I took
Yeah.
that a different way.
So however you interpret that, for the sake of time, we're going to try. I think that's great. Yeah, you do however you need to. For the sake of time,
I think you'll need a few more.
ooh. Now keep in mind, we did have the goal to span a cell phone, so there's a gap underneath, and hold a cell phone on top. Very cool. Look at this. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, 90 seconds.
That time thing will freak out a lot of kids.
Yes, well, usually it's a full class period.
Yeah.
So it's like they understand their already natural constraints. I would never do 4 minutes with a group of kids, that's for sure.
I've even had like a 5-minute timer, so I have like we end at 5 minutes so we can stop and clean
Yes,
up.
and clean up, and yep.
Kids freak out when that time.
Oh no, it's true. There's like an anxiety for anything that's time specific. Yeah. All right, 1 minute remaining, 1 minute. Take off the case, I love it. Oh no! Okay, timer is up, but I will ask us to just pause. Just pause for a second, just because we're almost out of time. I just want to point out a couple of things. One is, did we feel the difference? I mean, already that little bit. Normally, I don't recommend doing 4 minutes with the kids. This is a full classroom period. Also, if I were a better teacher, I would be going around and providing support, giving ideas, giving feedback. But I want to point one thing out. It's actually not in my normal slide, so I'll make sure to add this before I share it. But if you look at the OpenSciED resources, so OpenSciED is just a free NGSS aligned curriculum. And there is a documentation in here called look-fors. And so look-fors are what effective three-dimensional instruction looks like. Now, as a specialist in STEM or as someone in the classroom experience, I think these are good for any subject area. I just want to call out a few of these and point out how much more meaningful these became with the changes that we made. Students generate questions and initial ideas. Did you see that there was a big shift from just the art project to now we've got this compelling directive? Teacher prompts noticing and wondering, not correct answers. Students begin informal modeling and predictions. Students organize, compare, and interpret evidence. Like, we go through all of these and it starts to be a much more clear and rigorous experience just because we're using the same resources, same amount of time, but the way that we presented it, the way that we took it through, the way that we created a process that actually pulled them in, the quality of what's being created is amazing. I encourage everyone to go around and please check out. So good. But just for the sake of time, to respect your time, I know we're at the end of the day, I did want to make sure to show you this. So if you get a chance, please scan this and fill this out. It's a super short form. It'll just get your email so I can send you the slides. I'm going to send you slides from both sessions. I'm also going to send recordings from both sessions in case you missed the first one. Also, in these slides, this is going to hopefully give you access to some extra resources that I did not put in. But I'll also send you access to the mission stuff that we build. Like, if that is something that would help you and it's something that you want to integrate, that is free for teachers. So I would love for you to be able to utilize that. But whatever you're able to get out of this session, please feel free to use this however you want. If these slides would be helpful for training your own district, you have my permission to steal my slides, steal anything that you want that works for you without asking permission. I give consent to all of that. So if you have any questions, please feel free. I'll hang out for a little bit, but thank you so much for coming. Thank you for participating. If anyone wants to take resources like index cards or paper clips or straws, please rob me. I don't want to take them back, so take whatever you want.